Sorry, I got a message to give you a call.
So I was working at your Nissan dealership.
Uh-huh.
I started there at the very end of November. Um, I was in supposedly a 60-day training, um, which I sold two cars my second week. Um, there started to be a chain of events that happened with your top salesperson, which is Braden, which is also
Okay.
the assistant sales manager. The first
Okay.
situation was I had a customer call me and he
Uh-huh.
liked the car and he wanted to know if he came in today, could he leave with that car? So, me being new, I put him on hold, went to Braden because Nate um, was on maternity leave. So Braden was the go to person for me in the evenings. Braden said, yeah, he can leave with the car today. So I go back to the phone, let the gentleman know, yes, you can leave with the car today. He was traveling from 2 hours away. So he said, well, can I go ahead and start the credit application so that it'll be one less thing that we have to do when I get there? So I placed him
Okay.
on hold because I'm new and went to Braden. Hey, can he start a credit application? No, we don't do that. I said, okay. And I walked back to the office and told the gentleman on the phone, I said, well, the process, it wouldn't take any less time once you get here. We'll go ahead and get it completed then because if you do it online, it may get lost through the system. That's not what Braden told me, but I had to give this gentleman a reason why we didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to do it over the telephone, do the
Okay.
start the credit application. So Braden comes to my office and says to me, the reason I told you no is because I was doing a credit application for another employee over the phone. So I
Oh,
said, well, wait a
you
minute.
should. Okay.
So I'm saying, well, wait a minute. I'm confused. I said, you're telling me that you told me no because you were doing it for someone else. What makes it okay for you to do it for them and not do it for me? Well, I was busy. I said, okay. So the gentleman ended up coming in. He chose a
Mm-hmm.
car. I went through the process as I was trained to do. Um, and we find out that that car doesn't have an up to date inspection. So the gentleman picks another car. We go test drive that. Um, that car doesn't have an inspection. So he picks another Nissan Rogue that doesn't have an inspection. So the gentleman is upset, but he's saying, well, y'all told me I could leave today. And I say, I do apologize. This wasn't explained to me that I needed to make sure that the inspection was done recently on the car. So at that point, the gentleman's
Was it a used car, Keith,
it
or
was
a
a
new
it
car?
was a used car.
And when you say inspection, you mean a
Not
New York State
right
inspection for
for
delivery?
within 30 days. Within 30 days.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, we usually we do them on delivery. Yeah.
Right.
So
And
there
it
was no one there on site to do one at the time.
correct. It was a little bit after 5 p.m.
Okay.
And
All
it
right.
was and it was
Good enough.
these it was this the weekend before Christmas. And so
Okay.
at that point, the gentleman, he was upset. But throughout the whole training, it was get a commitment, get a commitment, get a commitment, get a commitment.
Yeah.
And so what the gentleman said was, "This is what I'm going to do. I have to go out of town Tuesday morning." He
Mm-hmm.
said, "I'll come pick up the car on Tuesday." He said,
Mm-hmm.
although he had like a 850 credit score and said he didn't want to put any money down, and Braden agreed that he didn't have to put any money down.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote out a check for $2,000 and said, let me give you this check and let me sign the paperwork. So when I get here on Tuesday morning, it'll be less things to do. So I went to grab something, check the inspection or something for the other car, see if somebody was back there that could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back, Braden walked me over to the guy and said, I'm not going to take your check and I'm not going to file any, print out any paperwork for you to do. We'll do it all on Tuesday. So at this point, I was bewildered because again, with the whole process, get a commitment, get a commitment. So not only did he
Mm-hmm.
commit to getting the car, he was willing to make a deposit on the car and willing to sign the contract for the car. but Braden did not allow him to do it. So I said, Braden, so why didn't you take his money or let him sign the paperwork? Well, I have to go see my grandmother, and to do all that is going to take hours, so I'm not going to take anything. That was a blow to me, right? So on that Tuesday morning, on that Monday morning, I get a maybe a 3-page text message from the customer. He went somewhere else and bought a car, and he felt like, and I can always forward you the text messages, he felt like that because I was the only one that was busy. He had heard some things said about me um, when I wasn't around, and he told me, be weary about this company because you never know who knows who. And so, that was the first situation. So the very next situation was we are going to shovel snow, and no, so I had went to Rick about it. I had went to Nate. Finally came back. I had went to Nate about it, and I had talked to um, Matthew about it. So Matthew was the first one that said, Keith, I want to apologize. We dropped the ball. Although his next words were, Braden is new to being a sales manager, but we did drop the ball, and I'm sorry. So my thing was, I lost this sale. This man would have been back here um, after signing the paperwork, after leaving the check, and so there's nothing going to be done. So when I said something to Rick about it, Rick was like, he should have definitely took the check. Um, there could be reasons why he didn't, but he should have taken your check. And so Nate was the first person I said something to, and me and Nate literally got into a, a exchange because Nate is like, he didn't take the check. Oh well, he didn't take the check. Let's move past this. But it wasn't easy for me to move past, and it was easier for them to say that because they weren't losing money. I came to McGuire Nissan to make money. And so now here's a sale that I'm not getting because he decided he would rather, instead of take the check and have the man sign the paperwork or either of the two, to go home and see his grandmother for Christmas. And so it was a lot. So at this point, um, Nate calls me. He said, well, let me talk to you upstairs. And Nate is saying to me, you're not changing anything around here. And I'm saying, Nate, that's not my purpose. My purpose is, if you guys are training, get commitment. This man went far and beyond to have a commitment by giving you a check and willing to sign the paperwork. And so Nate took me in Rick's office, and they were we were talking about, and I'm still expressing the same thing. And Rick is saying, you went to 7 people about it. No, Rick, I didn't go to 7 people. I went to you, Nate, and Matthew, which are all my superiors. So that's not 7 people. And so then the next day, I had 3 customers, and most of them arrived early. But what they did was they took my other 2 customers and gave them to 2 other employees. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute. I've sold cars here, and people have had 3 and 4 customers waiting, and no one gave me a customer. Well, we don't want to have customers waiting. I get that aspect of it, but why is it okay to give my customers away, but not give the other employees' customers to me? So at that point, Nate took me back in the office with Rick, and I'm expressing the same thing. And I say, Rick was like, when did this happen? I said, well, let me go downstairs. And because I wrote it down, I wrote it down when they had 3 or 4 customers, because another employee had offered me a customer, but they told him no, he couldn't give me a customer. And so, I wrote it down. So Rick goes to, oh, well, if you're around here writing stuff down, I'm taking you to human resources. So they put me, told me to pack my things and leave. At that point, I left. Human Resources called me a few days later. I went into the office with Selena, and I expressed everything. So that same day, I'm sorry, when I walked out of the office, what I said was, this is some nonsense. And then I took the customer that I had been working with for more than a week, and when I took him to Jared and said, hey, this is Jared. He's going to help you guys. I have another customer. Want to make sure you guys are helped in a good period. I handed him over really, really nicely, even though I was upset. And so I get called to the office, and he said, Rick said, you walked out of the office screaming, this is some bullshit. And so I looked at Nate, and I say, Nate, did I curse? He say, no. And I never said you were screaming either. I said, okay. And so I look at Rick and I say, so how do you think that makes me feel? You just lied on me to me, acting like I'm like this angry person and that I'm using profanity when it never happened. So he said, well, I'm taking you to human resources. So I get to human resources and Selena, she asked me everything that's going on. And so she said, do you mind if I call Rick over here? So we call Rick. Rick come over, and Rick is still saying you went to 7 people about it. And so I stood up and gave him an example. I said, I actually went to 3 people. I say, but I'm going to show you what it feels like when you say 7. Well, it's not the number. I say, it is the number because you said it in the meeting the other day. And now you're standing here in front of human resources as if I'm going to a whole bunch of people. So I walked over to 7 chairs and I say, so you're saying I went to this person, this person, this person, when in actuality, I just went to these 3 people. And then I said, you're telling me that we're not changing our policies for you. And I'm saying, well, that's kind of not the mission that I understand for. I say, because any company that's evolving, not that you have to change it, but sometimes policies and procedures need to be changed. And I say, what I'm asking is if it's okay for it to happen to one person, it should be equal to the other person. We gave away my sales to other employees. Nobody ever gave me a customer. We're sending my customers away. I'm losing money, but it's not happening to anybody else. So the lady in human resources, and her words are precisely just about, well, I'm not understanding what you guys are not understanding about Keith. Everything is not black and white. You can't just tell me anything and I believe it. And these are Selena words. So I was allowed to go back to work. Even though he said in the meeting, I think you need to be at a bigger company. I think you need to be at another location. I was like, yeah, but I've spent 2 months here and I've learned everything about Nissan. And, I've taken 80 some tests and learned the process here. It doesn't sound like you want me back at the location. Oh, no, you can come back. At that point, he turned red in the face. So anyway, I go back and the next situation was I'm out there. We're geared to go shovel snow. And Braden call all of us together and says, "Hey guys, let's go out here and get this snow shoveled really fast. We don't want Keith hair to get wet. I'm African American. I don't have any hair. I wear a bald head. So I'm like, I don't understand that joke, but okay. So then the next day we go out there and not Jared, but Joel almost run over a curve with one of the trucks and it has tinted windows in it. So Braden may have not known who was in the truck. But when Joel gets out, he say, oh, I thought it was Keith driving. Ha, 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 ha. And so when we get back in, I'm saying, hey, listen, all these jokes, I'm 45 years old, I'm not a child. I don't want to be hazed. I am the new guy, but I don't appreciate the jokes. And he's like, well, I'm sorry. And so he had apologized about the other customer that he lost his sale for. And I said to him, I said, well, so Braden, you've been in this office a couple times and it's always been about an apology. I say, that's kind of what's consistent. Just understand that I'm not a child. So we get past that. The next situation was we're moving cars around the parking lot in what seemed like a blizzard. You know how it snows here. And so I go to the next car and I say, Braden, is this the next car? Because he was telling us which cars to move. And he said, no. He sent me all the way to the back of the parking lot to get an SUV. And so as soon as I walk 2 steps, he jumps in that very same car that I asked him, was it the car, and pulls it around and parks it. And so when we get back in, finish pulling the cars, I was like, he said, Keith, you seem a little upset. And I said, well, you should understand why. You had me walk all the way down the parking lot in the snow when it was the car that I was asked you about. Well, I wasn't sure. I was like, Braden, if you wasn't sure, you wouldn't have jumped right in the car and pulled it around. And so I said, listen, your assistant sales manager, unfortunately, you're not going to be my go-to guy. I'm going to build a bridge and get over this just like I got over everything else. But let's keep it cordial. We'll speak. If it has to do with work and no one else is here, I'll deal with you with that. If not, let's keep it moving. So the next day I say something to Nate about it. So Nate says, well, Keith, he's our top sales guy. And I say, well, him being the top sales guy should not allow him to do things like this to people. Say, this is the third or fourth situation that he's done to me. And each time you guys make an excuse about him being the top sales guy. I did say to him, well, if those are the qualities that you want for your sales manager, then maybe I'll have to rethink what I'm doing. I said, because a good sales manager to me would have diversity, he would have understanding, he wouldn't be making the statements and doing the things that he does. I said, it's just not fair that you guys are making excuses for him. And so Nate says, well, I did have a talk to him about it. And so then same day, Braden comes to the office. Keith, I want to apologize. I was like, Braden, we've been down this road before. Let's leave the apologies alone. So moving forward, the Thursday before they terminated me, I had a sale for a $36,000 car. It was an older lady. She had came in. We test drove a couple cars. So she gets down. She wants the car. She writes the check. I go in the back just to make sure they're going to get the car clean, even though she's saying she's picking up the car tomorrow. Make sure they have it clean. And I come back and she's gone. And I say, Nate, did she leave the check? Oh, I told her bring it tomorrow. So, in my mind, this may be another situation like before. She chooses another car. So I didn't say anything. I said, okay. And I walked off and went to the office, sat for a moment to be sure I thought about what I said. So I came back to him maybe 3 minutes later and said, hey, Nate, what was the particular reason why we didn't take a check? And he was like, because I didn't want to. I told her to bring it tomorrow. Now, mind you, after I came back from the suspension or whatever it was, they had a meeting saying that we're taking deposits, we're definitely taking checks, and we're also going along the lines of doing cars over the phone. And so anyway, all this stuff is ringing back in the back of my mind. So the next day, the lady comes in, bring the check. That's fine. I have another customer that he's gonna come pick up the car on the following day. He writes out a check. And so right before he comes in to pick up his car, I get called to the office with Nate, Selena, along with Rick. And so as I walk in, Selena say, hey, Keith, we're going to process a termination for your employment effective today. And I said, so why is that? Well, for performance. Rick says you only sold 3 cars. I said, well, that's not true. I've sold more than 3 cars. He said, yes, you only sold 3 cars, including the car that you purchased from us. Mind you, I just purchased a car from you guys. And so I said, well, that's not true. I said, as a matter of fact, I sold more cars than Jared, and Jared has been here for 2 years. And I've been here for 3 months. I say, so are we terminating Jared as well? No, we're putting Jared on probation. I say, so I've been here less time and sold more cars to him, but I'm getting fired and he's getting probation. I say, okay. I say, so the next thing is, do you guys give a consult or get written up for, your performance or anything? Selena looks at me and say, from my understanding, they've had a conversation with you about it. And so I look at Rick and I say, you and I haven't had a conversation. And I look at Nate and I say, you and I definitely didn't have a conversation because we had an F&I meeting last week and you told me even though all your numbers are great, I think it would be a good experience for you. And so it's like, why am I being terminated here? Is there something more to the reason why I'm being terminated? And so, even looking at my paycheck, I sold 7 cars. I was off for a week and a day in a funeral in Virginia. But I sold 7 cars, but you putting on the paperwork that I only sold 3 cars. And so that lets me know that with everything else building up, that it wasn't about the cars because that's obviously not the truth. And then the last 2 cars I sold, the older lady that bought a car, me and Nate had looked at the paperwork and he said, I think you make $160, $160 on the front end of this car. We hadn't looked at the paperwork for the $26,000 car that I sold with the warranty, but they paid me $100 for each car and said that neither of the cars made any money, so they just given $100. And so this has been a real experience.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you calling me, Keith, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry. It's never our intent to have anyone come on board and end up in situations that you're describing. or some sort of adversarial, incidents or arguments or debates, whatever they are. And so, how did it all end? So we obviously let you go on that day, right?
Absolutely.
And did they make you whole for whatever monies that you had, coming or that were owed to you?
Well, the payments for the cars were not correct. I sold a 22 Nissan Nissan Altima that had, I think, 9,000 miles on it. He paid 26,000 for that. The lady had a Subaru that we had just recently received, and like I said, Nate had absolutely told me that I was making more than what was paid for it. It just was kind of, with all the situations. And then on top of it, you guys knew that I had just bought a car, but to terminate me from you guys, but to terminate me saying that
Yeah.
I only sold 3 cars when that's obviously not fact.
Well,
It,
yeah.
I'm,
Well, it sounds like certainly performance. I mean, for me anyway, and I can't speak on behalf of them, but generally it's there's a lot of factors that go into the equation of that, and obviously one of them certainly is the end result of sales volumes. But it's kind of the whole thing, and it sounds like from the beginning that there seemed to be situations that you're describing where there were just incidents of not arguments or maybe disagreements, or how you felt about the people you worked with, or Braden maybe as an example, or how the interactions happened that came across as maybe argumentative, which I assume could be a perception of how maybe they felt too, kind of how you feel. And so from a performance standpoint, I think there's just a lot of factors that go into it. But at the end of the day, the big question is, is this a long-term position that's going to work well for you? Certainly. And is it also going to work well for the team, or the dealership? And I'm sorry that it sounds like it did not go down that road, and then ended up obviously in separation. At the end of the day, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you calling, and you sound like someone that wants to drive the business, but you also sound like you've had some interactions that, as a new employee, may be difficult for some of the people to undergo. Not that that's wrong or right or anything like that. Just, it's my outside looking in from our conversation. But what would you like? One, I appreciate the information. We'll certainly, pass along the feedback and inquire and make sure that we try to, not have things repeat in the future. But also, more importantly, what is it that I can do to help you? Do you feel that we owe you more money, or are you asking for if there's any potential for a second opportunity, or what is your?
so my concern, my concern was what was going on, particularly to me, with me, and the way each situation made me feel. And I understand what you're saying, because Nate actually came to me after the whole human resource thing and said, well, you know what, Keith, I want to apologize because honestly, with these young guys that I have here, no one has ever challenged anything that I said. Right. And so you understand that we have 19, 20, and 21-year-olds as sales agents there. So from that aspect, I understood where he was coming from. Right. Although he's 28, I think he said he's been working for the company for 10 years or something. I get it. Another gentleman not just saying, okay, turn around and tuck their tail with everything you say. I'm a person. I am outspoken. So that part of it I respected with Nate. You guys do owe me money. The worst part about it is the way it made me feel, but also I just purchased a car from you guys. So now what you do in return is say that I only sold 3 cars when I obviously sold more. Because if it was a different situation and they had said it was because of a different reason, Keith could digest it, build a bridge, and move forward. Or if they had given me an opportunity when they pointed out something was an issue, it could have gave me a fair chance to change my aspect of it or shake hands and part ways, right? On my own terms. But no, you let me buy a car from you guys, lie about why you terminated me. I just got into a $25,000 car, and a lot of that was because I'm working at the company that I thought I liked, that I was told I was doing great at, that I'm selling cars, that I'm actually selling more cars than the person that's been here for 2 years, but I get terminated. How does that add up? And so
Yeah.
what
Well, yeah.